It is Wednesday, my dudes, and that brings us back once again to Velocity Lake Planet Coaster Series, in which we build a theme park called Velocity Lake in this game, which is called Planet Coaster. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 1 of 2, I'm going to say right away, just in case you want to watch this in one big go, of this roller coaster here, which is a soft recreation of the Zamperla Thunderbolt coaster. I'm going to be using the Star Looper coaster design. This coaster is designed to do big loops. You may have seen me place the kind of lift hill it comes with, and you'll see me place it just again in a second. It does this kind of vertical lift hill, but then it forces you to do an overbanked inversion at the top of the lift hill, and so I couldn't really use the normal kind of lift hill for this ride, so I ended up using a launched piece for it. But I'm going to say that this is kind of like a recreation of not only the Zamperla Thunderbolts, but specifically it's like a clone almost of Variable Gaming's recreation of the Zamperla Thunderbolt. So I gotta give credit where credit is due. This video would not have even existed had it not been for that guy's videos. Variable Gaming, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this guy on this series and in previous Planet Coaster series before. Easily one of the best coaster builders out there in terms of Planet Coaster. That guy, the amount of time he does spend just smoothing coasters is insane to me. So highly recommend checking out the video that he made of this coaster, because his version of this coaster is probably better than mine, to be honest. It's in the description. His was also a two-parter, actually. I didn't intend to copy that aspect of the video, but I guess it just worked out that way. I looked at the footage for this thing and I saw that it came to, just over 40 minutes, which I thought was a bit too much time to dedicate to one roller coaster. So I split the episode into two 20-minute episodes. So this episode will focus specifically on the coaster layout itself, and then we'll do the smoothing and the immediate vicinity around the coasters. Basically, we're going to plan out the paths and the queue line, and that's pretty much it. Then next episode, we're going to work on the station design, transfer track, custom supports, all the rest of the ride, really. So both episodes are about equal in length. Now, as you can see, this ride looks horrendously rough at the moment, and that's because I'm going to be using the 4-meter smoothing technique. And this is the first time I've really tried using the 4-meter smoothing technique for the entirety of a roller coaster's layout. I did use a little bit of the 4-meter technique for the big B&M coaster they built in the previous 3 episodes, but this time I thought I would experiment in building an entire coaster's layout using it. So this is more of me trying to get used to 4-meter, so the banking is not perfect. There's a lot of things that I have rectified since, but at the end of this episode, some of the banking will not be in its final point, and I think some of it's just not banked aggressively enough, ironic as that sounds, because at the moment it's way too rough. But when we smooth it out and get rid of those kinks, it ends up being not banked quite enough. Now, this is kind of a recreation of the Zamperla Thunderbolt. You can see I've kind of got, it's really hard to describe. After the vertical drop, I have 2 elements. I've got a vertical loop, a 0G roll, then it comes back around and we'll go back to the station. The real one has 3 elements. So the real Zamperla Thunderbolt, I can put a picture on screen of what it looks like. So it has a vertical loop, a 0G roll, then it just has a big overbanked dip before then going into the banked turn. I've kind of just got rid of those 2 because that's what Variable Gaming did as well, and I preferred his layout. But also, this is just generally bigger in scale than the actual real Zamperla Thunderbolts. Although there are less elements, the track length is pretty much identical to the real Zamperla Thunderbolt, just because the elements we do have are scaled up. So the overall track layout is, the overall track length is about the same length as the real Zamperla Thunderbolts. Well, I guess I'm saying the real Thunderbolt. The specific layout that I'm imitating here, which is the one at Lowne Park in Coney Island, New York, I think is this one here. Pretty short ride overall. I am saying that I'm going for the same length of track, even though I am keeping the same length. It is still a very short ride. I think the overall ride time for this, after you leave the lift hill, it's only about 20 seconds. I know this because the end screen is present for the entirety of the ride in the final POV. Obviously, there'll be a POV prior to putting the end screen up that isn't blocked off. So, but yeah, like I said, this isn't really a true recreation of the Coney Island Zamperla Thunderbolt, but I guess this would just be if a park requested a slightly different variation on it. This is maybe what it would look like. So that's that, pretty much. Like I say, the biggest inspiration was Variable Gaming's video, so do highly recommend checking that out, ya boy. And yeah, there's the brake run finish. So we now have the layout of the track completed. There is still a bit of smoothing left to do. So for those, I didn't really discuss what it was. I just kind of said 4 meter smoothing technique, but didn't really go over very much. Most of the smoothing I will be cutting through because it's very, very long-winded. But essentially, you select 4 pieces, press smooth all once, take the middle node, move the whole selection 1 notch forward, press smooth again, and then repeat for the entire track layout. Generally doing this between kind of 2 and 8 times, sometimes even a little bit more than 8 times for certain aspects of this track. So it's very, very long-winded. You can see me playing the footage back as fast as I possibly can. I think 12 times faster than real time, and you can still see it's taking quite a while. So I'm not going to show you all of the smoothing because this video would be longer than it already is, and I think you can get the picture of what it looks like after a certain period of time. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of this coaster explained. I went for the Star Loop Coaster A because Variable Gaming used this one as well. But also, I didn't want it to look like a B&M ride, which is what a lot of the steel coasters in this game look like. And I didn't want it to look like an aerodynamics ride either. B&M aerodynamics have very distinct track layout appearances. And, I didn't really want that. I didn't really want to make it look like it was made by a B&M mark or anything like that. So this is quite a good generic looking track that doesn't really look like a B&M or Arrow track. And, I've never built a Star Loop coaster before. Again, this is not really, I don't think the game wants you to build Star Loops like this. It wants you to use the gimmicky lift hill it has. The real life Star Loop coaster is called X-Car, I believe. I've only ever been on one X-Car coaster, and that coaster is now gone. It was called G-Force at Drayton Manor. You'd go up this lift hill, and then the lift hill would go over the top. You'd go upside down, basically. It was like a vertical loop as the lift hill, and it'll drop you down. You go through loads of tight inversions. Very, very short ride, but very, very fun. It's a real shame it's closed down. Drayton Manor closed it in 2014, I think, due to just high maintenance costs and things like that. So RIP. Hopefully it will get moved somewhere, maybe to Plymouth, so I can ride it again. But I'm not holding out hope. But that's the only X-Car coaster I've ever been on. I'm pretty sure it was the only one in the UK, the G-Force ride. I think one of the most famous examples of an X-Car coaster would be the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios Florida. I think a lot of people know about that one. That's X-Car as well. So kind of a bummer. I couldn't do a normal lift hill similar to Rip Ride Rocket. I had to use like the launch track pieces and then run it at a similar speed to how a high-speed chain might pull the car up. That being said, I guess X-Car... So there's quite a few different variants to the X-Car in real life. There's one layout, which is just called the Skyloop XT150, and that is basically just a big loop layout that uses the lift hill in this game. So I guess they added this to the game, and they only wanted you to make that one specific layout, but it's like the most boring layout ever, when X-Cars could do so many other crazy things. It's a bit of a shame that, the devs didn't include the ability to do any of the other kinds of layouts the X-Car can do. So that was what we're left with, this sort of weird launched track here that just runs at the same speed as a chain. Now, initially, I wanted the car to just go around the first corner nice and slowly at a level height, but the excitement rating for this coaster ended up being quite low because, for some dumb reason, the devs include all sections on lift hills and drive tyres. That's added to the excitement rating, so that obviously brings the excitement rating down. So by having this big, faster drop at the beginning, it bumps up the excitement rating a fairly significant amount. So I still maintain that excitement rating providers should not include anything before the initial lift hill, and of course anything along drive tyres or block brakes. I mean, you could even include stuff before the lift hill, but if the car is travelling along drive tyres, block brakes, chains, launches, anything like that, shouldn't be included to the excitement rating, because I think it's a bit unfair and will just artificially lower a coaster's excitement rating. So then, having high excitement ratings really favours just having launched coasters and stuff that don't really have any chain lifts or anything. And for certain things, like if you want to have block sections in rides, you can have multiple cars going around the track. Oftentimes you have to set the chain lift speed to be fairly low to give cars the opportunity to get around the track into the first brake run before the next car has enough time to get to the top of the lift hill. So bit of a shame. I guess I don't think excitement ratings really matter in this game. As long as it's not stupidly low, guests won't pay much attention to it. But I guess I like knowing that the game thinks my rides are good. And I think it does have some weight as to how much guests like the ride. I don't know, maybe it's just my kind of perfectionist in me wants to get the good rate. I want confirmation from the game that yes, what I'm building is a good ride. See, I think the worst aspects to the smoothing of this ride are the bottom of the drops after the 0G roll and after the overbank turn. the track is banked slightly to the side, and it really shouldn't be. I think it needs to be banked so that it's not banked. Basically, it should be level when the car is at the bottom of that dip, because that's when it's exposed to the highest amount of G-forces. And also, the little dips after it, the banking is not very good. Obviously, one of them is banked the wrong way to give you the impression that you're being thrown out of your seat. But the first one, which is a slightly faster one, it's kind of the track banks with the car, so you're getting pressed into your seat. But I think it's not banked enough, so you'll actually be getting more lateral G-forces than anything else. So you'll be thrown sideways, which is not really what I want. You want to be thrown either up or down, not so much side to side. I think in real life, roller coaster companies don't want their lateral G-forces to exceed more than like 3, and that's extreme in any given circumstance. So when you're looking at trying to make coasters realistic, lateral G-force is a stat you really want to pay attention to. Obviously, vertical G-forces, you don't really want them to exceed like 4 or 5. Negative G-forces as well, that you don't want to have them very high at all. But lateral G-forces are the underdog, I think not people pay much attention to. And so that's just a thing to keep in mind when trying to make a realistic coaster. Now, as always, I'm trying to get lots of nice pathway interaction with this ride, and the vertical loop I couldn't really get to be far enough away from the path for the supports to spawn in, so I'm having to make custom supports for the vertical loop here. The vertical loop is the one part of this ride that is made from prefabricated pieces, just because I find it really difficult to make vertical loops using the 4-meter smoothing technique. I can't really get the shape right. Later on, we'll be making a custom ride that doesn't have any prefabricated pieces available to it, so I'm forced to create things like dive loops myself using 4-meter, and it's really, really difficult. I couldn't really get anything to be exactly the right shape that I wanted, so I'll probably still use prefabricated pieces for things like vertical loops, and especially things like bat wings and really complicated elements. But 0G rolls, I think I'm pretty happy with, and also overbanked rolls, and to a slightly lesser extent, corkscrews. I feel like corkscrews are fairly easy to do with 4-meter smoothing technique, but I guess most things are pretty difficult with 4-meter because I'm not very good at it. That's why I went for a layout like this, something nice and simple to give me a good opportunity to practice with 4-meter smoothing technique before heading on to more ambitious things, which I believe will be the next roller coaster we build. That being said, I mentioned this during the construction of the B&M sit down. I did make a Smiler-inspired coaster. That construction took place just before I embarked on the construction of this ride instead, so if I feel like including that ride, I'll just jump back in time and upload me building it, or if I run out of footage and have to make an episode, then I might just make that as a bonus episode. I'm not sure. Would you want to see it as a bonus episode? I don't know if it's really, because it doesn't really contribute anything to this park, because I probably won't include it. That was just my first outing in trying to make a 4-meter smoothing technique coaster, and I think it just ended up being a bit messy, to be honest. There were a lot of not smooth elements about it, and it was just a bit too claustrophobic for my liking. It didn't really fit in with the overall aesthetic to this park. So here, I'm going with some slightly more pathway interaction. I wanted to have the perimeter of the ride be boxed in by the path, but I thought it'd be nice to have some interconnecting pieces that go underneath the track, just to kind of get riders, get people on the path that much closer to the riders themselves. Lots of off-ride photo opportunities, that sort of thing and whatnot. So that's what I'm going here. So I went with the perimeter first. I went with the perimeter in my head, and then we can just link up some edges through the center of the layout, and then we can complete the construction of my fences. I started placing the fences just there, as you could see, and then I thought we're going to stop this and finish the paths first, and then we can actually place the fences along where the pathway is going to end up. So I'm pretty happy with this path layout. Obviously, we haven't done a queue. The queue is going to go in the slap bang center of the layout, just before this, just to get the bit in next to the vertical loop, between the vertical loop and the station is where the pathway is going to go. And then I'm using a similar kind of fence and curb style to the B&M sit down. So I'm placing it all like this, so I don't have to bother with using the advanced move tool to place it. I could just plop it all down. Then we can select the entire thing and then advanced move it. God, that's really difficult to say. Advanced move tool it down vertically to get those walls, turn those walls into curbs. Great commentary. So I'm doing some smoothing of the plazas here. I've never really mentioned it because I feel like you can kind of see what's happening, but to get those big plazas like that, you make a corner and then you kind of place another path piece like on the corner's edge, and then delete that path, and rather than the path reverting to the shape it was, it will actually be slightly bigger and slightly more curved than it was, and you can basically repeat this loads, and that's how you build plazas out. If you want more information about how this is done, you check out Silveret's tutorial for how to make plazas in Planet Coaster. That's pretty much the technique I use for making all my paths and plazas in this game. But yeah, we're pretty much coming to the end of the content featured in this episode. The only scenery we're going to be doing in this episode is the fencing. Next time we're going to be doing a little bit more custom supporting and some canopies for the paths that go directly underneath the track, because it gets very close to the track. Any projectiles flying out of either guests' mouths or pockets, so we want something to catch them so that it whack little Johnny on the head, so we can add some canopies to these paths that go underneath the track. And we'll also obviously work on the station, exit queue, all of that. There's some fun puzzles that we'll need to solve to get the exit queue as well, so do look forward to that. But that's the layout of this coaster done, and that concludes the string of coaster episodes in this series for quite some time. In the next few episodes, we're going to work on the monorail system, which is a very overbuilt and overly complex system of monorails with various different tracks leading to various different destinations. So I really like it from a city planning. So if you like city skyline stuff, you might enjoy the monorail episodes. I think I haven't actually edited the footage yet, but I feel like the sheer amount of footage is going to be quite a few episodes worth of content for the monorail infrastructure, and I guess we're going to do some structure related to roads, car parks, that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to showing you guys that, because I think you'll really like the way the monorail came out, especially the station. Very good modern station building. I sounded a little bit too enthusiastic than I probably should have there, but that's to come. But then I don't think it's too long after that's all finished that we'll be moving on to the most ambitious coaster of this park. And I think it's definitely the best coaster I've ever built in this game, and probably ever will, because my goodness, that ride took so long to design and smooth. I pretty much lost all emotion. It was like I'd been lobotomized after finishing it. I was just so drained of willpower once I finished the smoothing of that ride. So, but I'm very happy with the overall product. After that, I haven't actually built any for more roller coasters. There's a little peninsula of land that doesn't really exist at the moment, but once I've built the monorail and car park, there's this odd spot of land that's like the perfect size for an oval shaped coaster, like a similar sort of shape to this one. And I just can't think of what to fill it with. I tried a kind of recreation of Drakenfire, not like a one-to-one, but like a similar one to this. Like, this isn't a recreation of the Thunderbolt, but it's very heavily inspired by it. It was a similar one to Drakenfire, but then I decided I didn't like that. Then I thought of an RMC hybrid, then just a generic wooden coaster. I'll probably go with a wooden coaster because I do like wooden coasters, but I don't know. Haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll be able to fill you guys in when I get round to recording the commentary for the episode after this one, because I've got stuff to do now. I can't record the next commentary right away. So we're going to wrap this up with a POV. I'm going to continue talking, though, because there's no sound for this. I think I was watching an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine on my second monitor, so that's what the audio would be, and I don't want to get copyright struck, and I also don't think it would suit the POV very well to just have that in the background. So here's the Zero G roll. I think it came out nice and smooth. In fact, this whole ride is smooth, but you can see that banking there probably needed to go completely flat at the bottom of that hill and at the bottom of that hill there, and this corner here, I don't think it's banked quite enough. I really like how this one came out, though. That was quite nice. And the rest of it's okay. So although there's a few rough edges that need, well, I guess that's poor choice of words. There's a few things that need refining, but overall, I'm pretty happy with how smooth this ride is. I think as far as smoothing goes, doesn't get much smoother, so I hope you agree and enjoyed this ride. On screen, there are links to things. The one on the left is a link to the full Velocity Lake playlist, and the one on the right is Variable Gaming's Thunderbolt recreation, because like I said, this was heavily inspired by that, so do check it out. Also, links in the description to things as well. Goodbye.